just a brief explanation of what we're doing here with Real Talk, though, with the Real News Network. The idea is to bring the community into the process of news gathering. We want to give you input on what we report. That's important because it's a way for us to get beyond the culture of mainstream media and a way for us to help you get beyond the culture of depending on the mainstream media outlets for news that doesn't concern you, doesn't tell your stories, isn't about you, so it's not connected to you. So we're hoping that we'll become more responsive by covering these stories that are important to you. So that's why we're here. That's why we are hosting these Real Talk, though, sessions. And we do hope that you enjoy them. So listen, to get the dialogue started, our reporters, Taya Brown, who is sitting here next to me, and Stephen Janis, where did he go? He is out there somewhere. Were asked to look into this story of the lack of recreation centers in Baltimore City neighborhoods.
This is Taya Brown reporting for the Real News Network in Baltimore City, Maryland. I'm standing outside the Bochek Recreation Center, which has just received some funds from the city to rebuild the center. However, Baltimore City continues to pour money into public safety and policing, which begs the question, what are the city's true priorities? The concern was raised at the Real News Real Talk, though, discussion last week. Where were all the rec centers? And what was the city doing for kids who have nothing to do?
Just washed out, nobody dances anymore. It's all about the drugs and the flash and everything like that.
To find out, we started here in East Baltimore, where the Bochek Madison Recreation Center has seen better days. Shuttered years ago, the East Baltimore facility has been out of commission since the city began cutting back rec centers decades ago. Today, Baltimore has just 40 rec centers across the city, but Rocky Brown, president of the Bochek Madison Community Association, recalls when there were over 100 thriving facilities, including this one.
Just by us being a dead park, this park was dead. We had nothing but drug activities and all that corrupted stuff that was going in the park was considered as a dead park. And for them to invest some money in a dead park, they wasn't going to do it.
That's why Brown has been pushing for years to reopen it. And last week, he said those efforts paid off when the city allocated over $700,000 to renovate and repair the aging structure.
But now the mayor's stepped into the plate. We're doing really powerful things. He came out for a groundbreaking ceremony. They're supposed to start on it probably this month or so. Supposed to be completed in June of this year.
It's a small victory in an uphill battle to restore the city's once sprawling recreation center system that appears to have a murky future.
It's just been clear for a quarter of a century that we have not put the amount of money into youth development that we need to help and encourage our young people.
For Councilman Bill Henry, the decline of rec centers is telling, a shift towards policing that has played out over 2 decades.
I came to work here in City Hall in 1991, and at that point, we spent about $160 million a year on the police department, and we spent a little less than $40 million a year on rec and parks. And over the next generation, the whole city budget would go on to double. We now spend more than triple that amount on the police department, and yet we still spend about $40 million a year on rec and parks.
In fact, financial reports reviewed by the Real News dating back 20 years revealed just how much spending on both has diverged. In 2000, the city spent roughly $26 million on recreation and culture, which includes rec centers, and $364 million for public safety, which includes fire and police. Nearly a decade later, while recreation spending rose slightly to $30 million, public safety spending had ballooned to $460 million. In part, the closure of rec centers was intentional. In 2014, then-Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake pledged to close decrepit facilities in order to focus resources on larger centers, including this one in Clifton Park. But that plan has not panned out, leaving some city activists upset. This is the Walter P. Carter School behind me. If there's any place that is a ground zero for the fate of rec centers in Baltimore City, it's right here. The school is going to be renovated, but the rec center is going to be closed.
Closing this rec right here at 43rd and St. George has been a really heartbreak for me. Really heartbreaking.
Which is why one community activist says she's angry.
We don't have much. This is all we have here for our children, and they come. We've had some of the worstest children come here that turned around and become better me's. And that's what we want. We want to see the children with better me's. You take this wreck, well, it's already taken, but we want to build a brand new standalone like this was brand new. We had everything.
The rec center at the Walter P. Carter provided the community a focal point and a place for youth to gather, and a way to keep kids off the streets, which is one of the reasons she has met with Councilman Henry to try to convince the city to rebuild. But if that will happen, or if the city will expand recreational facilities, is uncertain. The mayor's office would not comment. Another councilman, Christopher Burnett, has seen modest improvements to several rec centers in the 8th District, which he represents.
The most recent upgrade would be the Edgewood-Lyndhurst Rec Center. It was built maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. It was before I got in, but I wouldn't call it state-of-the-art, but certainly better than where it was.
But he said many of the facilities lack up-to-date technology, critical tools to attract young people.
I think the focus needs to be, just my opinion, needs to be more on what amenities do these centers have that attract young people, right? So one of my rec centers, the Edgewood-Lyndhurst Rec Center, has been very excited because they just got Wi-Fi like 2 weeks ago, and they're now like, can you help us get the word out? Because kids don't want to come to places that don't have Wi-Fi, even if they are going to come to play basketball, they will leave, if they need to get on the internet or go somewhere that has it.
Which is why he said the city needs a more detailed plan going forward. Part of the issue is financing. A plan proposed by former Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake to lease back city-owned parking garages to fund new rec centers has changed. Under Mayor Catherine Pugh, that money has been placed in the Neighborhood Investment Fund. The mayor's office told us instead of rec center funding, the money will be used to stimulate development in blighted neighborhoods. How the money will be spent will be decided by a board appointed by the mayor, made up of business people, financiers, and city officials. The Real News has also learned that the board will decide who gets the money in secret, because the body was set up as a separate charity or 501c organization, so it does not have to open its decision-making process to the public. But that doesn't mean Brown will give up his fight to expand recreational opportunities in his neighborhood.
They wasn't engaging the kids like they really trying to engage now due to homicide and the murders now. They really paying attention and focus on our youth now. That's more important.
He thinks it's the key to not just preventing crime, but to strengthen the next generation so they can build a better city for everyone.
We lose this generation of kids now, we're through. That's my modern thing. The kids need something to do. And if they don't have nothing to do, that's where the crime and the violence and the murders come from.
This is Taya Brown and Stephen Janis reporting for the Real News Network in Baltimore City, Maryland.
So that was, it's okay, you can applaud because that was some really, really good reporting. Really good and important reporting. Stephen, did he come in yet? Yes, Stephen, please stand up so people can see who you are. This is Stephen Janis. This is Taya Brown. They worked on that investigation. I'd like to point out that the first young person in the package who stood up and said, there's no dancing anymore, that happened right here 2 weeks ago. That was the young woman who took the mic. We gave her the mic, said, what are you concerned about? And she said, there's nothing for kids to do. There's no dancing, there's no nothing. Kids are, the police are always chasing kids down who are riding their dirt bikes in the street, but there's nowhere else for them to ride them. So this is what comes out of the community coming to these events and telling us what's important to you. We try our best to get to the bottom of these issues. So in order to do that, let me ask Taya some questions about this investigation. Like, one of the important things you uncovered was this feeling in the community that the city doesn't have a plan for the rec centers. Expound on that. What else have you learned?
Well, the thing is that the community is right. It doesn't seem that the city or city leadership has a vision or a plan for recreation for young people in Baltimore City. As we took a look, I just want to give you an example of the history. In 1980, Baltimore City had 130 rec centers. Okay, today we have about 43. So, and at the same time, the amount of money that has been invested in public safety, in particular the Baltimore City Police Department, has increased dramatically. So when we're talking, when city officials talk about how important it is to keep kids safe and to keep kids from engaging in criminal activities, we know for a fact that recreation centers and after-school activities and mentoring programs are absolutely essential to making that happen. So that's why it's so important that our city leadership have a vision for rec centers like this. And something that Councilman Burnett pointed out to us is that these rec centers aren't up to date. I mean, to not have Wi-Fi for this generation is absurd. So these types of, technical innovations, we need to have them available for our kids to keep them on the right side of the digital divide, as well as to keep them from falling prey to some of the problems in our city.
So I think we need to clarify for some people who don't quite understand the importance of a rec center. Because I think people think that a rec center is just a place where kids go to hang out, play basketball, play football. No. A rec center does what you said, provides access to technology that maybe some people can't afford in their homes. Rec centers are also places where mentorship programs and classes and organizational groups, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, maybe 4-H. I like to farm. I went to 4-H club at a rec center. These kinds of community activities, as well as not just for kids, but also for adults. It's a meeting place for seniors. It can be a meeting place for adults to learn additional skills, or just a safe place for social gathering. When you take all of this out of the community, what's left for people to access these kinds of services and activities? So now, Taya, the previous mayor, and I want to loop in our other panelists, I didn't forget about you, Councilman Ryan Dorsey and Lucky Crosby, and these questions will come down to you too, so you're not left out of the conversation just because I hadn't gotten to you yet.
We're cool.
Okay, good. So Taya, the previous mayor, you said in your report, wanted to invest in larger recs.
Yes.
And close others. So did that happen? What happened?
The simple answer is no, it did not. What our mayor, Stephanie Rawlings Blake, had promised was that she was going to close rec centers that, let's say, were dilapidated or perhaps didn't have a lot of attendance, and instead reinvest that money into kind of super mega rec centers that would have all the amenities that children in Baltimore would want. However, that did not happen.
So now I wanna loop in Rocky Brown into this conversation, because you were able to do something for your community that other communities weren't able to do, to get funding to revitalize your rec center.
Yes, that's how it all came to play. Mm-hmm. But the issue that really arises is the homework that I had to actually go about doing to achieve these tasks and stuff. Because, when you see, I was a criminal back in the years and the days, and I was one of the persons that actually corrupted Baltimore, Maryland, because my activities considered all over the state. And when I got arrested and actually went to the federal institution, we had to represent each state of the United States, and Maryland was on the map through the activities of what we was doing out of Baltimore City. And I just noticed something just now. Everything I do in 2018 was expired by that guy right there, sitting right there.
Eddie Conway.
Eddie Harris, man. Man, I'm pleased to meet you, man.
Eddie Conway, please.
Black Panther, Eden Street. Oh, in East Baltimore, man. Thank you, man, for encouraging me to do what I do in Baltimore City, man. Yeah. I just want to acknowledge you, man. All your work you did in our future and time back in the 60s and 70s, it didn't go unnoticed, man. I continue to carry the torch for you and make things happen in Baltimore City. I appreciate all the support and guidance that you gave me and the insight of how to run a great community. Thank you, sir. From the bottom of my heart. And as we went on,
It was a very hard task because by you involved with crime and stuff, Baltimore could acknowledge a warrior in Baltimore to do great things when you actually been taught by a great person in Baltimore City. And by him being away for a long period of time, he passed us the torch to continue to empower our community with free lunch programs and drug programs and doing things for our people, because that's what we more consist of. It wasn't about Baltimore, it was about our people. And we was trying to encourage our people and move our people to a different level out of poverty and homes and this and that and the other. And without the knowledge of what was really going on through the party and other organizations that pulled together with our youth to actually make it realize that we need help in Baltimore to engage our community to do the right things, from the homicides and all that, And I diligently work hand in hand with Baltimore City Police Department. I work hand in hand with the mayor's office. Jack Young is my boss and my president of Baltimore City Council. And these things that couldn't actually happen in Baltimore if these guys ain't step up to the plate and actually tell me, Rock, man, you ain't getting nothing for us. They didn't want to give me anything. Everything I did I did it all on my own in Bocheck Park from the beginning, because I had to axe the ground with Baltimore City in order to get recognized to do the things I do in this town. You just couldn't jump and take a community over unless you was a gang member or a drug dealer. They ain't gonna let it happen. You could be either one and you're gonna deal with you in a minute. But when you doing the positive things for the community, you had to actually have a axe to grind and get recognized through Baltimore City by the work that you do. And all the work I did, it was a very hard task, but at the end, it all paid off through diligence and being patient, and that Baltimore finished doing what they're doing to make Baltimore beautiful.
So you were able to get funding for Bocheck Madison Recreation Center.
Right. The Bocheck Park was what we consider in Baltimore as a dead park. Drug activities, murders, kids don't attend the park, grown adults be out there selling drugs, murders, and things that's going on in the park. And it's been like that for years. I mean, the park been closed for almost 20 years. And then when I started taking initiatives of actually getting the park together and actually doing something for our youth, it was a hard task because I get rid of all the drug dealers and try to actually straighten up the park. And Parks and Recreation, they was only concerned about the sports they had that was paying to use the park as a whole. When it come to our people in our community, they wouldn't even come inside the park at all because it was a dead park. Parents wouldn't allow your kids to participate. They don't never go in that park because, there's too much activities going in, wind up getting killed or something in the park. And it was an ongoing situation. Then once we initiated and started taking over the park, Parks and Recreations, the mayor when I actually took the park over, the mayor had $665 million for all the parks in Baltimore to be done over. It came down the pike that she had $365 million to do all the parks, Carroll Park, all these parks, Rita Church Park, and this park, Bocheck wasn't included. It wasn't included at all in the plan.
So
no, ma'am, it wasn't included. It was a dead
the
park.
City Parks and Recreation was just going to let Bocheck Park
It's a dead park. No,
die.
It's been dead for 20 years. Why would we do something in a park like that for? This is the issues I'm constantly getting. No, we're not. We ain't going to do nothing in Bocheck Park. And if you want to do something right about, you need to come to us and get a permit.
So you went and got the permit?
No.
No, what did you do instead?
No, how I'm going to get a permit? I'm the president of the community. And Bocheck is in my community, and this is the issue. When I took the community over, they realized that the park was in Bocheck. As a community, I took the community over. I had to get the people first. I want to get my people organized first for the change, because they were still under the mentality, under the old regime. The guys that's been in office in the 60s and the 70s, they still got that mindset of the old way. And now it's a new way and it's a new day in Baltimore, and we're really trying to move Baltimore forward. And you got to change the people's mindset in order to get them to understand, now I'm not tolerating any more drugs on Baltimore City Street.
Right.
I'm not tolerating y'all doing murders and stuff in my community. I'm not going to have it, because we got avenues, we got safe streets, people that actually engage with the people, try to encourage people to start doing the right things. And without these programs, it will never work.
So you said something that I want to go back and touch on, and now I want to bring you in, Councilman. Rocky, you said that Parks and Recreation didn't want to come into your community and spend any resources on the rec center unless sports organizations could pay to use the rec center.
No. You got a rugby team with Towson University and all that. If you want to play that, go down Bocheck Park and you got a field to do what you want to do. My kids want baseball, football, basketball, and no.
and they're not because they can't pay, because they're poor kids.
No, it's no rims, no
Nothing.
sports equipment, no nothing. The only thing my kids play is guns and drugs. These my kids. That's the only they tolerate it. There's no. If you was to give a kid a basketball, he'll never get it. You know. And then my avenues. It took us a year to actually get the goals on it. After the field had been put down for the basketball, it took us a whole year to even get the goals up.
So now I think we're talking about, council member, we're talking about resources. We're talking about how the city responds to communities that don't have resources. If the city is basically sending the message that we'll provide services for you if you can pay for them, what does that say to communities like Bocheck Madison, like communities like that, who have no resources, who don't have the connections? And we understand that all the services that rec centers provide can help the community. How does the city council respond to that when that's what the community is faced with?
See, and this is we going back to the beginning. Then Baltimore City, Shannon Sneed, the 13th district councilwoman now. We are energetic, and Jack Young and all these people are energetic now to start doing things for me. When Parks and Recreation actually started doing it now, because like I said, they turned my plan over with I tapped in $4.7 million for Parks and Recreation to build Bocheck Park. $4.7 million. Bill come down, they cannot give me the money until they sell some parking lots and garages.
Okay, and that's the Neighborhood Investment Fund.
Right, and they never sold anything, and the mayor got our office, and we went back to the beginning again. All of a sudden, Parks and Recreation found $700,000 all of a sudden to try it again to do something in Bocheck Park. I'm a warrior in Baltimore City, and if I wage war against you, it's an issue because every time I see you, we're going to have an issue or problem. And my issue was with Senator Nathaniel Moffat, because I kept on accusing him of not doing anything in Baltimore. You see me out here doing it. He told me, you got to crawl before you walk. Right? I'm not going to give you nothing. You know, you got to crawl before you walk. That was his issue. And stop looking at my handicap and my disability because it's in my head. And these are things that Senator Moffat was encouraging me. And stop crying so much. You know, you got to crawl before you walk. And he kept on encouraging me to keep doing what I'm doing. Don't give up. Just keep on doing.
But just never stop.
Right.
But just never stop.
Right. So with the $700,000, he came one day and said, Rocky Brown, here goes $750,000 to go with the $700 that Parks and Recreation had. So that's almost $14,000 they got to build a park. Coca-Cola, Shannon Sneed called Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola Consolidation came, gave me another $110,000 for the park. And that's how things happen to be positive, the way, you know, they only had $700,000.
So either one of you, council member or Lucky.
So what Rocky's talking about is the city being heavily reliant on private funding in order to do anything that it really considers a pro-social. And you know what we heard a lot about in the report and have already heard about this evening is the city's inclination to spend on policing over just about anything else. Dr. Brown was here. I know he had to leave, but he's been at the front of talking about how disproportionately we spend on policing versus education, health, recreation, park, and arts and culture, and so many other things that fit inside just what we spend on policing. From the city council perspective, if you look at the budget, so I voted against the budget last year for a number of reasons. Top among them is, I have no reverence for this, what we refer to as an apartheid budget. I also have no appreciation for tens of millions of dollars going into an absolutely opaque fund that we heard about, this NIF fund, that we have no accountability mechanism, no understanding of how that money is to be dispersed in any way. And when push comes to shove, under the current administration, although it's apparently a new day today, in particular, budget time comes around and nobody even bothers asking for my vote. because I'm an outlier in terms of like where I stand in my values and my political inclinations and where I think we should be placing our resources in this city. And so, if I say, hey, so you're not going to put anything in that budget for my district? Hey, you're not going to put anything in that budget for here? No, we can't cut the police budget just this little bit in order to put a little bit of this somewhere else, even if it's not even in my district. Even if I'm going like, let's take a high-level view of the needs of the city. And the kind of crumbs that are offered, well, can we get your vote if we get you like $100,000? I'm like, no, I ain't that cheap.
Wow.
And so you can't buy me like that. But what we're talking about is a scarcity of resources where we need them in order to improve the quality of life for people, and no scarcity when it comes to policing and policing and policing. Mm-hmm. And it's true that we're under consent decree, and we hear this messaging about the police department needing a certain amount of resources, and it's true they need a certain amount of resources in order to achieve some of these hard, fast things that the department is required to do. But it's also true that it's an incredibly, incredibly mismanaged police department.
Right.
That there are tens of millions of dollars to be found just in them responsibly staffing the department.
Right.
And I'm not the only one that's seeing that. I have the numbers to prove it, and the consent decree monitor can back that up in an identical fashion to me.
Wow.
We have other places that we can improve our tax base in the city. And when we hear a lot of people talking about increasing our tax base in the city, the first thing that most people are talking about who are given a soapbox to talk about this, what most of them seem to be talking about is how are we going to get more people to move into Baltimore City.
Right.
Let's be real, though. We can increase our tax base by improving the quality of life for people who already live here in Baltimore City.
Yes.
A grocery store in your neighborhood increases the tax base of Baltimore City. Mm-hmm. A street that's more walkable than it is a highway for county commuters to pass through your neighborhood. That's an increase to the tax base in Baltimore City. These are the kind of things that make our communities more livable. And these are the kind of things that are utterly affordable in Baltimore City. And when we do that, we have the opportunity to increase the revenues so that we, on the one hand, can clean up operations like the Baltimore Police Department and make them more responsible so that we don't have to continue to keep dumping the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars into them that are absolutely wasted and yield no returns on the quality of life in the city. And on the other hand, we're actually increasing our available resources just by investing in things like making sure a person has the ability to get from point A to point B.
Right.
And I just want to I harp on transportation, but let me just be real clear about this. If you own a car in Baltimore City, you can get to 100% of the jobs in the metropolitan area within 60 minutes. If you don't own a car, and that's 30% of Baltimore City that doesn't own a car, and they're incredibly highly concentrated in historically redline black communities. Incredibly. You look at black redline communities, the rate isn't the city average of 30%, it's 50%. Or in some census tracts, it's 80% of people in communities don't own cars. You don't see that kind of concentration in middle-class neighborhoods. You don't see that kind of concentration in high concentrations of white people in neighborhoods in Baltimore City. It's only in historically redline black communities. If you don't own a car, you can get to 9% of the jobs in the metropolitan region in 60 minutes or less. That's a recipe for people to remain unemployed and a recipe for communities to remain devoid of resources.
Okay, that's the show right there. That's the show right there. But I have to dig into something that you said, the Neighborhood Investment Fund, because this is important. When you're talking about the city not investing in recreation centers that provides the kinds of services and classes and opportunities and all kinds of good stuff that will do exactly what you said, Mr. Crosby, to improve the quality of life for people in the neighborhood, then you have to start to ask yourself, okay, I start to ask myself, why is the city not interested in improving the quality of life in the neighborhoods where these recreation centers have been closed? Why is the city not interested in improving the tax base through improving the quality of life of the people who already live in these neighborhoods? So when you looked at the neighborhood investment fund, and you found that the neighborhood investment fund is not receiving any input, and this is my question for you, Councilman. The neighborhood investment fund receives no input from the people who live in the communities that money is supposed to be invested in. The decision the decision for how that money will be invested is made by, first of all, it's made in secret. Community members don't even know. It's made by city council members. It's made by.
No, it's not.
Oh, it's not?
No.
I'm sorry, it's a board.
It's a board that's appointed by the mayor.
Oh, okay, thank you for correcting me. A board appointed by the mayor that makes the decisions in secret. And the board includes, am I correct in what you, developers and members of the business community?
Bankers, financiers.
So, Councilman Dorsey, how can the community that this money is supposed to be invested in have faith that this money is going to be invested in a way that's going to be beneficial to them when they have no insight into this process for how this money is invested? They have no say, and they don't even know how much it is. How can they be confident in this?
Does anybody have an answer for that question? I certainly don't. I don't have an answer for that question. That's not something that I believe that the people of Baltimore have any basis to have confidence in. I have no basis to believe that social engineering is going to fix Baltimore City in terms of allowing outside investors to determine what our communities need. I have no basis to believe that that's a recipe for success for Baltimore City.
So I want to give Councilman Dorsey a chance to respond.
I'm
sorry.
Lucky? You want Lucky?
I'm sorry. Yes. Pardon me.
Hello, everybody. What's your name again? I'm Lucky Crosby, Sr. I'm a resident of Sandtown, Winchester. Let me start with this. In 1976, my mother took me to a recreation center called the Margaret Ruffin Recreation Center in Gilmore Home Project. So when we was growing up, the recreation center was a safe haven. Then they taught us baseball. Then they moved it to Lillian Jones Recreation Center. To be a little familiar with this, you have like Stricker, Calhoun, Baker, with myself and Antoine Bennett. We grew up at Lillian Jones Recreation Center. If it wasn't for Lillian Jones Recreation Center, I wouldn't be here today. Some people like to say Sandtown is Freddie Gray community, but we was there before Freddie Gray was there. And the reason I tell you that, I had the privilege of working at Lillian Jones for 19 years before Mayor Kurt Smoke sold the recreation program to the PAL Center, the PAL Police Center. Then they had us train the PAL polices, then fired us. If you had tenure, they transfer you. I didn't have tenure, so they terminate me. So I remember this like it was yesterday. My oldest son and I marched in front of 417 Fayette Street to try to save Lillian Jones. I wrote a letter, but I used the name of Jeremiah Lee, one of our friends. When the mayor got the letter, they asked the director of the recreation department by the name of Thomas Overton at the time to bring Jeremiah Lee and Lucky Crosby to the meeting. So you know it couldn't be because they were the same person. So when I showed up at Jeremiah Lee, they fired me again. But let's be perfectly clear what recreation is and what it should be. Always in Baltimore, we did not have proper facilities to train the young men and women. So therefore, we had a raggedy computer while others with more resources had more updated computers. We had the oldest, raggediest uniforms when others did not. In order for us to go, they took us one time, baseball, they took us to Cleveland, Tennessee, a bunch of African-American kids in Cleveland, Tennessee. We stopped at a 7-Eleven, they said, y'all boys ain't welcome here. So we jumped back in the van. But the reason I bring the story up, we ate donated juice from the Cloverland Milk Clerk and bologna and cheese. the whole time we was in Cleveland, Tennessee. So I think recreation had been underfunded because, let's be very honest, recreation in my day was majority African-American kids because the kids in the more well-to-do communities had resources. So they didn't need to have to kowtow to the mayor and whoever was the director at the time. But when they closed Lillian Jones Recreation Center on Stricker Street, a friend of mine named Marvin Hayes, we used to coach together. He had 40 IDs because you had to go get an ID to play sports. 40 IDs are 40 murdered kids. So this how important Lillian Jones Recreation Center was to the community of Sandtown. And they, being our elected officials, took it from us.
I mean, I'm sitting here listening to you explain how important community and rec centers are. And I just remember growing up in my little town in Jarrett, Virginia, even we had a rec center. We had a YMCA in that little town. We had 2 stoplights. Now we have 3. We're a metropolis, my hometown of Jarrett, Virginia. We have a traffic jam at rush hour every day. It lasts about 15 minutes. But we had a rec center in our community where all the kids could walk to the place and hang out, you know, when their parents were off at work. But when I grew up here, later on in life, I lived in Southeast DC. There was a rec center within walking distance from my school. And I was able to participate in all kinds of programs. The latchkey, so-called latchkey kid, hung out at the rec center before my mom came home. With all the other kids, we got to know each other. We built a community as children, as youth. And then we learned other skills and all that kind of stuff. And then you look at Baltimore and you see the amount of money that's in the Neighborhood Investment Fund. And how much money is that? $52 million. $52 million from parking lots. I can't even wrap my head around that. But it comes from somewhere, and that's great. But here you have communities that are dying, and they're being left to die.
Hey, can I say something?
Yes.
Do you realize, I'm going to tell you everybody this is a secret. Do you realize that the Maryland Penitentiary, the Maryland House of Correction, all the facilities in the state of Baltimore, Maryland, have more recreation than Baltimore City streets?
Stop that. No.
The prison system has more recreation in prison than Baltimore City streets.
The prison system.
If you've ever been in prison, you get more rec in prison than you get on Baltimore City Street.
So, wait a minute. So what you're telling me, what you're saying is that this city would rather spend the money to lock our kids up. They'd spend the money to lock our kids up, and that's the only way our kids are going to get recreation is if they go to prison. But they have to jump through hoops like you did, like Lucky, and like you did, Rocky, to get funding for rec centers. Well, I'm gonna include the audience in some questions because I see y'all. I see you. I have to ask this question though. When we're talking about a city with resources. When you give the police department $464 million a year, it's not that you don't have the resources.
550.
Oh, it's 550 now?
It's about that.
$550 million. It is exactly what you said, Councilman, an allocation of resources and the lack of political will to share those resources with certain people. And I think that the automatic inclination is to believe, it's just black people. It is largely black people. But really, what's going on here? You've got private investment bankers and developers from outside of the region deciding on what to do with how much is the investment? $52 million. They're not talking to anybody in the community, but the same city council is asking, how do we raise the property taxes? How do we raise the property values? The property value in a community stays low if the community is considered to be dangerous. And if a community is always considered to be dangerous, it's going to be over-policed. If a community is over-policed, the prisons stay full. And the private prison corporations keep getting their money. But the very same people who claim they want to improve the city don't actually put the money into where the solution is. So I have to ask you, Councilman, what is the likelihood of this neighborhood investment fund setup changing to include community members? And then we're going to open it up for the
Let's keep things in
audience.
perspective. And let me just clarify one thing about how budgeting works in this city and also put things in perspective. You're talking about a neighborhood investment fund that's about $52 million out of a $2.6 billion operating budget in the city. So it's a really small portion all in all.
So we're talking about crumbs.
But let's also be real clear about how budgeting works in Baltimore City and how absolutely little the city council has to do with any of it.
Oh.
I mean, people, if you don't understand, if you don't know the budgeting process here in Baltimore City, you should be educated about this. It starts with the mayor and it ends with the mayor. Yes. The mayor, the Budget Bureau and the Finance Department are directly accountable to the mayor, not the city council. They prepare her budget. It then goes through the Board of Estimates, which is a 5-member body that includes the mayor and 2 other people she appoints as 3 of the 5 members. So it goes through as the mayor's agenda. It comes to the city council, who holds a week of hearings on it. And if you can get 12 out of the 15 city council members to agree on a cut and get 12 out of the 15 members of the city council to hold fast and say, we're not going to pass this budget until this mayor volunteers to make this change in it, then you got no chance of moving anything because the city council has no power. It is statutorily not empowered to increase spending anywhere or move spending anywhere, only to cut. And with respect to the budget and no other aspect of the mayor's signing powers on ordinances and bills, the mayor, unique to the budget, has a line item veto power, which means that if her budget comes from the Budget Bureau through the Board of Estimates and to the city council, and the city council says, well, in order to try to get this one thing over here, we're going to cut this thing by $200 million. That line item that we cut by $200 million, the mayor can veto that amendment from us as a line item veto. And you have to have 12 out of the 15 city council members in order to override that veto and demand your cut, just in order to get her to voluntarily put that money somewhere else, because we can't move it there. All we can do is cut it. That's how the budget process works in Baltimore City. And so,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And so in order to have not funded that NIF fund, we would have needed 12 members of the city council to not vote for it, and I was one of 3 people that voted against the budget last year.
Lucky, how do you fight that?
Can I just say something real quick?
Yes, please do.
During the Freddie Gray uprising, whatever you would call it,
yes,
people all over the world send money to Sandtown, Winchester, and we have not seen any of the $22 million. The people that told me that they had the money and were going to distribute the money to the community were the Associated Black Charities.
That's a whole nother level to the discussion. Stick a pin in it.
We need a supermarket and a recreation center.
Stick a pin in it, because we're going to get to that. But we need to get some audience questions. So Tracy's coming around with the microphone, so raise your hand high. First hand, second hand, third hand, fourth. Okay, I'll be back, I promise. And when you get the mic, please speak up. Use your outside voice. Don't be scared.
How you doing? My name is Ivan Potts. And I was saying what the brother said, it's more recreation in prison than on the streets. I was raised in prison from the ages 15 on up to 31. I was in prison like my whole time. So I know the difference between how it is out here and how it is in there. And the thing about it is, Baltimore City streets is kind of designed like prison. You got the COs, that's the police. You know, the blocks is the tears. And you can't even walk to the store without being harassed by the police. You can't even just stand and wait for your food outside the store without the police pulling up saying, move. Keep it moving. So I could relate to when he said there's more recreation in prison than out here, because in prison you got recreation 3 times a day. Every day, you go out in the morning, you can work out, you can play basketball, you go back, you go to chow, you come back out for recreation, you talk on the phone, go to the gym, that's in the afternoon now. You come back, they do count time, you go to chow, you come back, you go back out for recreation. At the recreation, this is evening recreation now. After that recreation, you get your rec out, you get your exercise in, you come back, you take your shower, cook your food, go to sleep, and it starts all over again. Back to morning rec.
And question, see, in another issue, see, back in the prison era, back in the 60s and the 70s, our recreation considered anything, activities. We had karate, you could actually play professional baseball where they give you a uniform. We had basketball teams with uniforms on, and we was boxing in the prison and all. Sometimes all this is, throughout a whole lot of that stuff got cut out today. You can't have contact with inmates the way it was before. But back in the day, we did karate, we practiced gymnastics, we did this, and there was so much activity you get involved in. And you had a whole lot of superstars actually came out of prison. You look at Skip Wise and all these other famous basketball players and all these other people. These guys coming out of prison playing these sports, Muggsy Bogues, all these guys. And these guys was really legends in these little parks. That's where they started, like Chick Webb's and all these parks that encouraged them to play basketball. You had coaches and stuff that actually trained these guys when they was kids, and they just ran away with it. Len Bias and all these guys, it's through the encouragement of the recreation center that encouraged us to do it. When we came up, we didn't have recreation center. Our recreation center was the alley. We played in the alley, and we played baseball on Baltimore City streets, and football on Baltimore City streets. And then they banned that you couldn't do that anymore. You can't play baseball on Baltimore City streets. You can't play football on the streets. So what the kids left to do? Pick up a gun and drugs.
Because that's plentiful. Those were suddenly plentiful. Recreation centers weren't.
Ask a kid to
organized activities.
Grab a kid, 2018 kid, grab a kid actually you know how to make a wagon or a skateboard.
Wow.
And you're going to give them the wood and all the tools to get it. It never happened.
It would, right.
You can get one of these older guys, they can build a wagon, and Pop can build a wagon in 10 minutes.
I can build a wagon. You got another question.
I'm saying he could be able to do it. And I take that wagon, go to the food market, and make $50 or $60 carrying people food home.
That's
out the wagon he done built for me.
That's right.
We have one more audience response.
Got another question?
I'm grandmother Edna, and I hold a lot of titles in Baltimore City. And I'm beat up inside the boardrooms and in the community because I do active, truthful investigation in the city. So what the problem in Baltimore City is, Baltimore City has a community friendship club with the community leaders who run the community, because I am running around the city saying, we're arguing about rec centers. You know they're not going to give you the money when you got a brand new senior building in every district in Baltimore City that runs from 8 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the evening. After 4 o'clock, the building is closed. I live in Mount Vernon. We have the largest senior center in the city that closes at 4 o'clock, and I've been lobbying, so I'm going to start this in the room tonight, that we approach the city, Parks and Recs, Miss Massey them, to use the senior centers, which is community buildings, to put our children in it from 5 o'clock in the evening till 9 o'clock during the most dangerous hours that our children are loose on the streets. They are city property. We should be able to use them. It's so many community building people that do excellent community work, including me, with no building and no funding to get them. So why should we waste time arguing when there's the facilities right there in your neighborhood, Sandtown, Cherry Hill, the list goes on. And we're not lobbying to put our children in a safe that's intergenerational support. I run a senior organization that we work with young people. I brought them here with me. I'm telling y'all, you got to back up and reprogram your battle. If you can't get one thing done, go and do the next best issue. She lives in your district. She lives across the street from Bochek. And I applaud you. So I'm telling you, you need to be lobbying to have Baltimore City Parks and Recs open those senior, well, they already open. That's one thing we ain't got to do. We need to lobby to have those senior centers made available for our children to walk right across the street in their neighborhood and go right in. You don't need a van. You don't need a bus. You just need somebody to remain in the building and unlock that door. Well, they already unlocked. And let the children in. There's bathroom, there's kitchen space, all inspected by the city. So you don't even have to get a permit because it's all inspected by the city. So I'm trying to understand why we are not, as community leaders, fighting to put our children in safe, lead-free buildings, brand new equipment in them in every district in Baltimore City, right in front of your eyes, instead of fighting, and our children are dying on the street while we as grown-ups arguing over something that you can easily fix. I'm an advocate for the children here, sir. I'm an advocate for children.
Yes, okay, we understand it. If you look at Bochek Park, you just mentioned Bochek. Bochek Park, man, due to activities we had tapping into Baltimore City, or Parks and Recreation to give us anything. I got my church. My church is a multi-purpose center that the elders can come and do crochet, they can come play little games and do all the things the elders want to do. They have flea sales in the church. In the evening time, until this rec center get built, my church is facilitated to play basketball. We work with Banner Neighborhoods, and Banner Neighborhood sponsor, because it's more than sports than basketball. It's soccer, track and field, little dumb games, tennis that our kids have a hard time achieving and stuff like that. They don't have no issue about there's other games besides basketball. Mm-hmm. And Banner Neighborhoods, Robin, and they had actually under partnership with Parks and Recreation is now giving these kids opportunity to participate in all the games. You know, you can come in Bochek Park and play all sorts of games. We always go back to that little play thing called slime. You know, we just spent almost $800 the other day letting kids play with those dumb slime. And I'm telling the people that's a waste of money, but you got 180 kids enjoy it.
Right. Right. But what about the communities that are not like that don't have this?
It's up to the leaders to step up to the plate and initiate and start doing things. See, this is the issue. You can't be compromised in Baltimore. Baltimore is at a point where they do not care. You know, all they're concerned about the funds and things they need to run this town. You know, when it comes to other activities and concern about our youth and our kids, they act like they have a concern about it. But trust me, believe me, and I push this more. Kids are our future. If we lose this set of kids, this generation, we are through.
So specifically though, to the idea of opening senior centers and extending the hours of availability for senior centers to include programs for youth. What are both of your responses to that?
There's two things I want to point out here, and let's be clear. We're talking about systems at work here, right? Mm-hmm. One of the systems here is economic disparity and wealth gap and different culture around income, and how the city addresses communities based on their wealth, and the outcomes in a lack of investment are not really different in most of these cases. Yes, the city significantly invests in the wealthiest communities, yes, but in the middle class communities, the lack of investment is more or less the same as in the most impoverished communities in this city. And it's for different reasons. The most impoverished communities are the most challenging. It can be some of the most challenging to organize and galvanize people around to demand more resources, and especially when they're juxtaposed with the wealthiest, most empowered people. But then middle class communities, we don't invest in them because the city assumes that, oh, well, they're just going to privatize their kids' after-school activities. They're going to go into the private summer programs and things. They're not going to avail themselves of this. But then what we result in, because I got these dead parks in my district, and I represent the most homogeneously middle-class place in the whole city, and so we end up with nothing in those places either, so that we devastate the opportunities for moving to opportunity and to have more mixed income communities in that respect. The other point that I want to make is that with respect to using senior centers as after school or as rec centers after hours or whatever, or during mixed hours, is that the senior centers are run by the health department. The rec centers are run by the Department of Rec and Parks. And to come back to similar to the budgetary powers in the city, all of those agencies, DOT, DPW, Rec and Parks, Health Department, these are all reporting directly to the mayor of the city of Baltimore. The mayor's office is the one that's supposed to be coordinating and de-siloing things. And for as much as we've heard people talk about, we need to undo these silos in city government, we haven't seen that happen. What we've seen is a doubling down in things like the NIF. As an example, we've seen a doubling down of neoliberal corporate mentalities. We want to see, well, you belong over here producing this product and this aspect of our operations here, and you belong over here, and if you can show us your metrics that are performing in your area, then we can say that we're doing a good job, and if you can perform to your metrics over here, we can say that too. And there's no incentive for them to actually collaborate like that, and so we don't see Rec and Parks finding an opportunity to use health department spaces.
So yes, Lucky, please.
Real quick. They sent undercover detectives to the gym of Lillian Jones. They wanted our men and them young boys so bad.
No, you can't just leave that one right there. You got to explain that one.
Lillian Jones was known to have every program the kids want.
Okay.
They wasn't giving us any money. So they tried to figure out how we got money. They sent undercover police from the Western District
to find out how you funded yourself.
I ran the gym.
See, that's pro and tell. See, Baltimore, back in the days, they had things, that's pro and tell. See, you got things if you start doing stuff positive for community and start making a whole lot of noise, improving the community, Baltimore City and Washington, D.C., the FBI, they used to wage war against that because they didn't want us to uprise or be powerful in their life when you start doing something productive for a community as a whole, because they feel as though the community, once they get organized, that they're gonna overthrow the government, and it was stuck in their head. You know, they got it stuck in their head, and they do anything. They come in here. It's like 5 police in this room right now. It's like 5 police in this room right now, trying to figure out what is going on.
Right.
While all of us are here together.
Who's the threat in here?
Right. All of us are here together. And they go back and they act like they normal people. And you just got to be focused and conscious about what is going on. And the part about assassinating people's character and things of that nature when you're doing something positive for the communities and people. Because they don't want you to uproar or have any kind of, like, you keep talking about Freddie Gray and what went on. See, things been doing what you talking about, Freddie Gray. This has been going all the way back to the 50s and 60s when I come up. It ain't nothing new that just started happening. It's been going on ever since the 60s and the 50s and all that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, I have to tell you, for those who have no idea what he's talking about, I need you to look up a program, Google, Bing, whatever you want to do, COINTELPRO, COINTELPRO. Look it up. It was a real thing that the government did to Black and other activists, and it has not ended. So we got a question over here. Thank you so much for waiting patiently. I shall explain it when this lady asks her question.
Okay, I don't really have a
Yes,
question.
yes.
I have a comment. And I want to tell you, my grandfather was the first officer friendly in Baltimore City
yes.
and Cherry Hill. He actually had in his building, you could go downstairs and box. You could do everything. Actually, I ran the pool at Cherry Hill for 10 years. And Miss Durden came from DC, Wrecking Parks. And then I was no longer had a job there because I was a part-time retired fire inspector from Baltimore City. And so they were trying to say we were double dipping. And you had a lot of us that were lifeguards and we ran the pool. So I ran it for 10 years. Cherry Hill has 2 pools, an outdoor pool and an indoor. I ran the indoor pool. If they do exactly what my grandfather did back in the day, he would take the children from Cherry Hill, the market that was out there, used to get the children to distribute the market flyers, and you could earn extra money. And he kept that community tight. If a parent had a problem with their child, they say, call Officer Murdoch. He'll take care of that. Now, all you have to do, you got police now. If they overfunded, put them back out on the street, make them walk the beat again. Get to know the community. Nobody wants the police to talk to them at all because they're not our friends. We don't know them. We don't trust them. You walk the beat, you get to know the community, you know the beat of the community. So if you do that again, you're not spending any money. You're actually saving money because you riding around in a car and they see the drug dealers, they ain't doing nothing. The state's attorney said she cutting out prosecuting marijuana. You don't need to do that. That's a waste of time. That's low level. So you need to take that and run with that money. Mayor Smoke said years ago, we should legalize marijuana. He said that.
Yeah.
If they'd have done that, you take the profit out, our communities won't be like they are right now. So now you got everybody on the corner selling everything. So at least we would know what you're selling. You'd be like the pharmacy. We know what you're selling out there, you know? So we need, when I grew up, I grew out at Westport. We had a rec center. We had ballet. I did everything in the rec center. My mother worked at the post office in D.C., went to school during the daytime till she got her master's degree. And my mother had 3 children. The rec center saved my family because me and my brother and sister, we were there from the time we could get out of school. We stayed there all night long. And by that time, my mom was going to work. You go in the house, and that's it. So the rec centers are havens for our children. But you have to utilize what you have. If we're going to take back our communities, take back the daggone rec centers, open them up, let the communities have them. Let them have them. They'll run them. We'll run the rec centers. You got a lot of people in communities that are not only that. I was the lifeguard instructor in Cherry Hill Pool. Those children learn to swim. You got 3 indoor pools. You talk about rec and parks, you talking rec centers, but you got 3 indoor pools. Chick Web, you got Cherry Hill indoor, and you got Callow Hill. Callow Hill has the Baltimore Swim Club. These black children are swimming. I mean, really swimming. Right, you need to do an article on stuff that's operating and doing very well. Instead of saying, open up these dilapidated rec centers, you got to get the lead out of them first. You know how much money it costs to get the lead out of these things? A lot. So if the community want to take it over, let them take over the rec center. Get that mess cleaned up. But you can't put children in unsafe buildings. So, and then once you get it, who's going to operate it? Where you going to get the funding from? Where you going to get all this other stuff? Like the lady said, we got to do something in our communities to make them better. Places to live, decent places to live. Give it back to the communities and let the communities take it over.
Trust, believe me, it's back. We got all that. We done, everything has been on the map, and things that we need and want, we have it now. Trust and believe me. Through the effort of Baltimore City and keep coalition with people and other networks, they reassuring that our kids will be out concerning the Wrexham and Bojack Park. See, but the thing is, it's not only Bocheck Park. We trying to enhance the whole state of Maryland, trying to engage in all the communities and let Bocheck this be the starting point of achievement, and I hope that the rest of the political leaders can adopt our lifestyle, how we did it, because it wasn't only about the parks, it was the trash, the alleys, the people, lifestyle, the murders, the drugs. There was so much issues that was in these communities that you would have to address before you even get to the point about sports activities. You know, how you gonna be having a sports activity, a basketball, football game in the park, and 10 minutes later it's a multi-million-dollar shootout in the park?
Right, right.
You know, and the people that shoot it ain't us, it's the kids.
Yeah.
You know,
One more.
you bumped me too hard. You know,
Yep. So we got one more question, but before we go to the question, I need to explain COINTELPRO really quickly because it is important. Because what you said was, I know some people, especially some younger folks, think, oh, they're not undercover cops, and oh, please. The federal government under the FBI actually created a program to literally destroy every black organization that ever existed in this country. It started with J. Edgar Hoover when he was just a rookie agent going after Marcus Garvey and somehow getting him tagged with mail fraud and getting that man deported. And it grew to when Hoover became the director of the FBI, that big ugly building on Pennsylvania Avenue is named after J. Edgar Hoover, created this program that was a covert infiltration and what is it called? Surveillance operation of every black organization in the country. It didn't matter what the organization was. It didn't matter if it was the Nation of Islam. Didn't matter if it was Martin Luther King Jr. Didn't matter if it was the SCLC. If it was black folks organizing to make our lives better, J. Edgar Hoover, using the FBI, declared all black organizations the greatest threat to the security of this country. That's in the COINTELPRO papers. So the federal government went about a campaign of infiltrating, sending undercover agents, spying on black activists, literally spying on regular old folk who knew black activists, tapping phones, you know, sending agents in, undercover folks, sowing discord, spreading misinformation, all to destroy black organizations. The Black Panther Party was the main focus, but every other black organization came under that umbrella, and they didn't stop with black organizations. Because every other oppressed group of people, the American Indian Movement, the SNCC, thank you, the white, the Communist Party. I don't know why I can't remember. Every oppressed group of people that created an organization that was based off of the model of the Black Panther Party and fought for their own self-determination against this government, for their people, every organization was infiltrated and destroyed by COINTELPRO.
And you know what was my greatest threat when I was doing what I was doing back in the communities? The greatest threat of the United States to Homeland Security was grits. Free breakfast program for the kids. That was one of the worstest mistakes that they didn't want us to do, is feed the kids, because it empowered the people to start coming together. We found out that sickle cell was a leading thing of sickle cell anemia was, you know, found out we was affected by it. And they done tested almost 5 million people and found out through us that sickle cell anemia existed. Free breakfast programs, feeding people, clothing people. All these things they didn't want us to do. It was going to constitute us to unite. And that was one of the things that ProIntel didn't never want to do.
And so that's why these forums are important, with your input and us sharing our information on how we can coalesce and come together. So we got another question in the audience.
Yes, my name is Patrick Henderson. And Mr. Dorsey, you mentioned the fact that the city does little to help its people, but spend too much of the budget on the police department. That's very true. Do you know how much of the speed camera revenue and the red camera monies go to the police?
All of it.
No, 44 cents of it goes to the police. But what if we stop the predatory discrimination of the cameras? Because if you will drive around, if you drive up Cold Spring Lane, you will notice that when you get to Loyola, there are no speed cameras. But if you keep driving and come within 2 blocks of Morgan State, there's a speed camera, 4 of them within a block radius. So that's discrimination and predatory. What if we introduced, or the city council introduced, a tax, a commuter tax on the people 50,000 people who come in here every day, 5 days a week, clog our freeways, tear up and leave potholes in our streets, a $2 a month tax on them. Would you sponsor a bill like that to help get the city off of the people's back?
That's a great question and a great comment. For context, Lucky and I were talking about a commuter tax as we were sitting up here before the program began this evening. I've been in the past outspoken about the need for a commuter tax in Baltimore City because we have so many people driving into Baltimore City every day. We have twice as many people who drive into Baltimore City for their employment each day as the number who drive out of Baltimore City each day. The bigger issue, I think, is that we have so many people driving in the first place. And let's also be clear about these cameras. The cameras are giving tickets out. I initiated the research on the cameras also. 50% of the tickets that are actually being given out by these speed cameras are going to non-city residents. So we are gaining significant revenues from these people coming into Baltimore City each day. Also, if we look at the income demographics of the city, the least financially, the lowest income portion of Baltimore City also tracks geographically with the areas where we have the lowest rates of vehicle access in the city. So the lowest income people are the least likely people to be ticketed by these cameras in Baltimore City, but they're also the most likely people to be impacted by the dangers that cars create in their communities, because historically we have used road construction of unsafe roads, unsafely designed roads that prioritize the movement of high volumes of cars at high speeds as a violent mechanism to destroy black communities in Baltimore City. The highway to nowhere on the west side, Edison Highway and Urban Avenue through the east side, widening of roads like Edmondson Avenue, Perring Parkway, and all these other roads. Northern Parkway used to have half as many lanes on it as it does today. I represent the areas around Morgan State University, and I can tell you that the people who live in those communities are begging for those cameras to be there. I got at least three community organizations asking for more cameras in that immediate vicinity right now, enough that I have to ask the Department of Transportation.
Do they beg for cameras too? Because there are none in theirs. So how do you explain that, sir?
I don't represent the Loyola area. I represent the area around Morgan State University. I can tell you there's no shortage of people asking for these cameras because these streets are incredibly dangerous. Baltimore City's crash rate is 370% the rate of crashes of the rest of the state of Maryland as a whole, and Maryland leads above the nation in the overall crash rate. We are becoming an even more dangerous place to exist for pedestrians. And again, let's look at who the pedestrians are. 30% of households in Baltimore City don't have access to a car, are reliant on public transit to get around places, and that is very clearly the lowest income communities in Baltimore City. Those are the people that are bearing the brunt. And the statistics bear out, not just here, but across the nation, that low-income black residents are more likely than high-income white residents to be struck by cars and killed. And we have these, and Baltimore is not unique in how we have historically constructed large, dangerous roads for the movement of high volumes of cars at high speeds through black communities, to their devastation.
Even though we have to be careful with how we place these cameras, because this is an issue in Washington, D.C. too. We have to be careful where we place these cameras, where we're not overburdening poor people with the ticketing. We also have to take public safety of the most vulnerable people into consideration. Is that about?
That's about right.
So, okay, we got 2 more questions from the audience. Then I have a question of all of you.
Can I just say one other thing?
One other
thing
Really
here,
quickly.
because you asked how much of the revenue is going to the police department. Let's put it in a bigger context than where do we say this little bit of revenue is actually being allocated. Right now, we have $240 million in revenue coming into the city that would not exist if not for the use of single occupancy vehicles. We are milking the use of cars as a revenue source. $240 million coming in from things, including the $52 million from parking garages, such that we heard about before. Of that, however, only $190 million is actually going to the Department of Transportation. The other $50 million is going somewhere else, and that's more than the revenue from the cameras as a whole. So whether it's coming from here or coming there, there's more revenue than the cameras that's coming in from the use of cars that's not going to transportation. And of the $190 million that's actually going to the Department of Transportation, $0 are going to promote alternative modes of transportation to cars.
So we do have to focus more on public transportation to solve all of these issues. Yes, sir.
Yeah, speaking of poor income communities, I have just 2 quick questions. What is the plan for economic development for blacks in poor and working class communities? And is there a plan for affordable housing to launch a fight back program for gentrification masquerading as development?
There is not a comprehensive plan, but we can look at some of the things that have happened here in this city. One of the things is that voters passed the creation of an affordable housing trust fund, and then the city council passed a tax in order to actually put money into that fund so that the city has a pot of money that it can use to incentivize and promote and support financially the development of affordable housing. We still lack while we have that, we still lack a meaningful inclusionary housing law here in the city that would require any development that is taking place to actually have and must, put a must on it for the development of affordable units in the city.
More exclusion of actual community members
That's right.
from policy.
And then to link this to transportation, all of these roads that I talked about, when I talked about Edmondson Avenue, Harford Road, Bel Air Road, all around the city, Park Heights Avenue, all of these were once thriving corridors of community business, that these were Main Street centers of these different sectors of the city, and they're not anymore. Every one of these has been prioritized for the movement of cars to the devastation of the business community and the Main Street environment that they once housed, where people were walking from their homes to these places, to businesses that existed there. Today, every one of these corridors is what organizations like the Urban Land Institute would refer to as a disinvestment engine. Businesses won't come there because they know that people don't feel safe walking there, so they never locate there in the first place. Unless we change that transportation environment, businesses won't come to these neighborhoods, and we're only left with this idea of destination commerce and destination jobs and places that are removed from our communities. The way to transform economic opportunity in our communities is to create the environment that's hospitable to it. And we're not investing in that when $240 million is coming in from cars, only $190 million is going to DOT, and none of it is going to anything except to continue to promote the use of cars.
Lucky, please.
I hear the councilman, but I had 15 years at the Baltimore City Housing Authority, and the first thing I would say, they need to audit the books. Until you see what's coming in and where it's going, you can't make decisions like this. Being a lifelong Baltimore citizen, I watched the harbor rise up when Uptown, where I live, died off. So it's got to be some kind of equity in fixing what our elected officials use the money that's supposed to went uptown and they use it down in Canton, Fells Point. So we got to deal with the truth of the matter and stop allowing people to control the money then we had no accountability. That's why we're in the mess we're in today.
So let me ask you real quick before I go to this last, with a few more questions. So if you have a government you can't trust, who's going to audit the books? Who audits the books? Who do you trust to audit the books?
Well, we have an audit department at Baltimore City, but it doesn't cover the housing authority because they haven't figured out if it's state or federal yet.
Of course, there's a loophole that no one can figure out.
But look,
of course.
Entities like the Housing Authority have a limited purview, and their capital comes from the federal government. So it's isolated from these other things. What we can also be talking about is the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is separate from the Housing Authority, and those books can be audited. I'm not going to mince any words about this. We have a comptroller in the city who has 40 auditors that are under her purview, and they're not doing auditing. But we also have an independent inspector general for the first time ever as of January 1st this year, because I passed my bill to create that office that put the question on the ballot so that voters could choose to have a independent and strong inspector general's office to look after misconduct of finances and other waste, fraud, and abuse within city government. We also last year made big strides in passing bills that prioritize racial equity. So we have to now hold to the laws that we are creating and use the tools that we're giving ourselves. We are in a better place as of January 1 this year than we were December 31st last year.
Okay, Lucky, please go ahead.
But excuse me, if the money stayed in the city for over 90 days, the mayor controlled the money. The money that left over from housing, if it stayed in the bank for 90 days, the mayor and can use the money at her discretion or his discretion, correct?
The federal money is specified. Any money that comes in from the federal government must be used for the purposes that the federal government gives it to us for. If it's not, then we have to give it back to the federal government. There is no opportunity for federal money that is intended for things like housing improvements to migrate into the general fund of the city of Baltimore. But there is plenty of room for that money to be used in ways that wiggle around the most effective way of using it for improving housing conditions in public housing, to be used for less effective things.
So then the question becomes, who makes the decision about what's improvement and what those funds can be used for, what those people are going to define as improvement or enhancement, and who they're going to leave out and who they're going to include?
Almost exclusively, the operation of the Housing Authority of Baltimore City is separate from all other aspects of city government because they are all federal employees just kind of working in and around Baltimore City.
This sounds like another show. I got a question.
We have 3 more questions and 15 more minutes left in the program, just as a heads up.
All right, thank you. Oh, I don't hold it. All right. So y'all did a good job of explaining what are some of the challenges to the recreational funding that goes on in the city, and talking about how I guess the mayor and other city council members perhaps are resistant to funding recreational centers because of the I guess lack of proof that one thing y'all mentioned is that recreation reduces crime in the city, and we all know that. And as an after-school kid, we all understand this to be the reality. And so I was just wondering, what are some plans to actually readdressing that, and community members possibly coming up with proposals to receive this funding, or council members are working on getting that funding to the recreational centers?
See, funding-wise, the community leads, this is how I do what I do in my community. I don't depend on Baltimore City to give me funds to run programs. I write grants. See, this is how you do it. You sit back, you want to do something, you write a grant. They got millions of dollars on the table for what you want to do. And all you got to do is take some willpower, or you can't do it, get you somebody that know how to write a grant. And just sit there and write a grant for the community. And when you write, go all the way with it. They got a grant on the table for $1.2 million, go $1.10 million. And just write grants for that, and you'll wind up with $1 million.
They give you that once you apply. But community leaders, sometimes they don't know what's on the table for what's funding, and you got all, the mayor had how much on the table for kids?
I mean,
$5
look,
million or something?
the city itself applies for grant funding, right? If we look at the health department that runs those senior centers, the health department is only 20% funded from the general fund of Baltimore City. It doesn't get any dollars that it can't get a 4 times matching for.
Okay, but here's the question, though. I understand and I agree that community members should be writing grants because there's money out there to be had from somewhere. But we have politicians who come around asking for our votes, coming to our churches, clapping on Sunday, telling us to vote for them and making promises and coming out and dancing and saying they are people's. And then they get in office and they don't pass any kind of legislation that helps people. So what do these policies look like for the kind of change that people want? What does the policy look like that's going to give more transparency and more community involvement into the neighborhood investment fund, into reallocating some of these funds to the people who need them?
I'm no stranger to these same things you're talking about, right? I went and campaigned to people saying, I know that every other politician that came looking for this city council office you ever heard came to you and said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to clean up crime on these streets. You know what we're going to do? We're going to invest in youth. You know what we're going to do? We're going to improve these schools. I wasn't running for school CEO. I wasn't running for police commissioner, and I wasn't running for mayor. So I don't control the outcomes of the police department, the schools, or the budget. But what you can count on is my vote based on my values. And those are the things that I talk to you about when I say we're spending too much money on police. You can count on my vote not going to an apartheid budget. You can also count on me to say, let's talk about the powers that I actually do have, and those are legislative powers. My campaign looked like this. I said to people, it's unrealistic to think that we're going to have better outcomes around public health, public safety, and public education if we don't create a livable city first. Let's ensure that our city has housing, employment, and transportation opportunity as the basic foundations of livability, a place to work, a place to live, and a way to get between the two. And we must address this from a public policy perspective, legislatively, because we know that our disparity around these things is of the creation of our own creation through public policy, historically driven by racism, that we have to replace old policies rooted in racism with new policies rooted in anti-racism if we want to dispel these kind of disparities. That's what I've tried to do with housing policy, like passing my source of income discrimination law that says that landlords in Baltimore City can no longer say no vouchers accepted.
Okay.
That's what I've done by passing legislation like my Complete Streets Ordinance that requires that we invest on the basis of equity and requires that we invest transportation dollars on the basis of improving transportation alternatives to cars. And that's what I did when I voted in support of the $15 hour minimum wage and said that I would support an override of the mayor's veto there.
So Lucky Crosby, what about you? What do these policies look like for you?
See, first of all, if we're going to do inclusionary housing, that does not only mean the teachers, the firefighters, and the police.
Yeah.
And in order to do decent, affordable housing, we must deal with some real systemic issues around housing. Now, Baltimore, Maryland has a long history with racism in housing. And until we address those systemic issues, it's hard to say that you're going to have these 400,000 people move into this city when we can't take care of the people that already live in this city.
If our local legislators are really digging in where they need to be to change these systemic issues here, we know we can't stop at local policy. We know that there are laws at the state level that prohibit us from doing what needs to be done here in the state, or that we need to go to the state and ask for enabling legislation. I voted against these tax incentives, these tax breaks for cops and firefighters, and the firefighters are great, but I voted against these things because there's no reality to them actually producing more police officers living in Baltimore City or anything like that. At the same time that I was voting against that, I was going to Annapolis to try to get the same exact tax benefit to be given to us for the lowest paid 25% of Baltimore City's employees. We have full-time employees here in Baltimore City who make less than $25,000 a year, and our mayor worked against that same exact tax credit for them, even while she was giving it to cops that were making more than $100,000 a year.
So we've got, I mean, we covered a lot, and we've got a lot left on the table. I have two questions that I need to get to. One was from Paul.
Actually, this is something I've heard from members in the community, as well as when we have sat down at the Real News to talk about this, which is that it seems like in Baltimore City, there's a very purposeful aspect to the disinvestment that we see. That it is as if the city is trying to push out Black residents, low-income residents, to make room for gentrification. And this is something that concerns me and concerns community members that I've spoken to. And I wanted to know what you have seen in reference to this sense that we feel that gentrification is just around the corner, and that things like not investing in rec centers is a way to discourage families from staying in these communities. Is this something that you've heard from people in the community?
I mean, it's not just that it's that it's likely to happen. It is happening. We're churning population. We're losing one Black resident for every one white resident that we gain. It's already happening in the fives and tens of thousands of people at a time, year after year. So we are absolutely churning population, and we're investing in rec centers in the gentrified neighborhoods, so only once they are gentrified, with few exceptions, things like the Rita Church Center, in Clifton Park. But for most of the people who would want to get to that, you either got to climb a fence on the east side of Lake Clifton Golf Course, or you got to walk up from the south side where we have incredible amounts of vacancy. So you're walking through half-vacant neighborhoods for a while just to get to a place like that, or you're coming from the opposite side of Clifton Park over in Chum.
Wow.
It's a hike to get there. It's not like it's in the community.
So that's the connection between gentrification, the systemic poverty, persistent poverty, and racism, and what is going on now. This is the last question. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I have to get this question in.
How y'all doing? I really have like a comment. Basically, my name is Tawanda Jones. I'm the sister of Tyrone Wessel, was brutally executed in Baltimore City on July the 18th, 2013. But I won't go into all of that. I just want to let y'all know that the gentrification is real, the COINTEL, all that's real. And it's to the point that when is enough enough? And it's like when you stand up and you do something right, nobody stands behind you. Don't nobody want to fund you or anything unless you're taking hush money. And you couldn't write me a check big enough to sell my people out. And it's something worldwide, and I wouldn't wish a mother, a sister, another brother into this club of losing your loved one from corruption. And we're in a city where the mayor's corrupt, the state's attorney's office, the list goes on. And I'm going to end on this note before I go. Enough is enough. Right now, Keith Davis Jr. is going on his 4th trial, an innocent man, gunned down right after Freddie Gray was executed. And nobody's talking about that. That's swept under the rug. And a man is sitting fighting for his life. And if this town don't kill you, they will bury you. Trust and believe me. And my mother always told me it's the things that you don't know that will get you killed, and it's the things that you know that will get you killed. And if you try to like bring community organizations together and be positive, give back if you get money, look at Nipsey Hussle. Murdered. And if nobody don't believe that was a hit, hey, believe what you want to believe. So I'm going to end on this note. It is no justice. It's just us. We're more than hashtags and body bags. We're more than being 6 feet in the dirt and pictures and buttons on T-shirts. Our lives matter. Thank you.
So
I have a very enthusiastic
gentleman. Yes.
How y'all ladies and gentlemen doing?
Love it.
My name is Mr. Davis. And I agree with a lot of things that this young man said right here about cleaning the streets up. But okay, you're gonna have to get a whole lot of push brooms and shovels and rakes, because when they take that racetrack down up in Park Heights, it's gonna be some murders. Because kids been doing parking cars there on their mother's lawns and everything when people come into this city for for that racetrack up there. And now they talking about moving the racetrack away from here. Oh, you don't get no brooms and shovels. You better order some more M-Lambs. That's what you better do, because them young boys is gonna go crazy up there. They taking it out the community. What they gonna put there?
So is that an issue you want us to look into?
Yeah.
All right.
Most definitely.
All right.
What they gonna do? They talking about kids killing each other up there in Park Heights, and they've been doing this all their life.
All right. So looking
Before
into.
I was born, people from Pennsylvania and all that coming down here had people they already know them as like family, because when they go there, they go straight to the house and leave the cars on their lawns. What they gonna do now?
Right. We will look into that issue of of the impact of the racetrack and what it means if it's going to be moved, where it's going to be moved. Are we out? We have,
Because I have one more.
okay. Mm-hmm.
Good evening. How you doing?
Hi.
My name's Brandy.
Hi, Brandy.
I actually work for 311 for the city of Baltimore. So I hear a lot of what it is that everybody's talking about here this evening. My biggest thing is that our neighborhoods look terrible. Alleys, streets, there's trash everywhere. And people can realize and recognize the separation. If you live in Medfield, like say for instance, I live in Medfield, they are redoing the Medfield Recreation Center as we speak, which is crazy. And it's one of the best, it has one of the best elementary schools in Baltimore City. Now, if you were to go to Penn North, Sandtown, and Winchester, you don't have the same funding, you don't have the same kind of priority, right? Same thing goes for, like I said, trash and debris, your dirty alleys, the illegal dumping. The kids have nothing to do, put them to work. Have somebody round them up during the summertime and clean these alleys that the solid waste department is neglecting to do. You can do a tour through Baltimore City, east to west Baltimore, I guarantee it, I can pull a service request to show it, and there is literally trash everywhere, and it creates a rat problem, and these rats get into people's houses. You want to know why people's property values aren't going anywhere? Because you have no face value to any of these neighborhoods. They don't want to live in the neighborhoods because they looking at the house next to them that's boarded up, that has had trash in it since October, and you literally have people who call in October, November, December to try and get their yards clean for 4th of July to have an outing with their family. That's sad.
So what you're addressing an issue of City 311 not responding to residents' needs.
No, we don't respond to it. It goes through a process. So basically, you call 311, you submit a service request, and then we dispatch that out to the appropriate department, whether it be solid waste, transportation, water department, what have you. There is a disconnect between our system when we receive the request and then when people are going out to take care of the request. So those requests are not being satisfied. They're being closed out and saying they're being done, but I'm talking to someone who's looking out their back door, and they're telling me that this is the same stuff that's been sitting out there for months. And it creates an issue because once one person does it, the rest of the neighborhood does it. We don't have the same kind of atmosphere like back in the day when everybody would get out and they would clean their block and they would clean their alleys. They didn't allow for any of that. Now you don't have that same kind of attitude. So put the kids to work since there's nothing else for them to do. And that's just my personal opinion. But if you know you have a shortage of employees in the solid waste department, you really don't have a whole lot of money to hire new people or new programs, then do something where you can get these kids, offer them credits in school, something in order to be proud to keep their neighborhoods clean. It's got to start at home. These kids walk through these streets, they walk through these alleys every single day.
So
and you mean it, and they see it. They see that their government, that the people who are running their municipality, does not care about them because they're looking at the same stuff every single day.
Okay, so thank you. So this would, your answer, one of your answers, one of your policies would look like getting kids involved in in providing some of the services that the city won't, to give them buy-in into maintaining the community.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Same thing goes for the snow program. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the senior snow program. If you are over a certain age in Baltimore City, if you have a disability, they have you register and they'll have school-age children come out and shovel your sidewalk, shovel your walkway, so that you can safely get in out of your... Same thing goes for the summertime. You have that in the winter. We didn't really have a whole lot of snow for them to shovel this year. So really, basically, what did they do? So put them to work again during the summertime. You have these youth work programs. You want to pay them. You know what I mean? But this is a service learning hours as well. This is something that you could work towards.
Okay.
It's nothing else for them to do, and we don't have any pride in our neighborhoods the way that we used to. And if you're saying that our children is the future, you need to instill that pride in the children, in their neighborhoods, to maintain them for the future.
Okay, thank you. Real quick, and then...
Well, I'm just going to say something
Bill's had
real
his
quick.
hand up for a minute, then we really do have to go.
Back when we came up, when our eras and times, we had Afro Clean Block. Afro Clean Block empowered us to get out here and start doing things in Baltimore City. We had... once they completed Baltimore Afro, they used to give us a fun wagon. They used to come down, Model City. They used to come around and we empower communities on the cleanup block program. Now, today, the reason that your community is not like that is lack of resources. They have programs now through the Enrollment Control Board where they pay kids $50 a day to work one day in cleaning up Baltimore City street. I paid my kids, how much kids they get this year? They got almost $1,000 for a 10-week program for cleaning Baltimore City Street.
Wow.
It's called Be More Beautiful in Baltimore.
So that's the program.
And you are hindered by lack of information in your community to empower your community. And they got programs that would enhance the kids. You got Youth Works. And all these programs are out here to encourage our kids to be productive in our community.
So
it's lack of understanding what's really going on.
So if anyone is interested in these programs, please stick around and see Rocky afterward. And we'll provide this information for you on the Real News Network on our website. Last question.
I just wanted to say something really quickly I guess from my heart on behalf of the kids of Baltimore. I work as a mentor in the city for Baltimore youth. And I find that with many of them, it's just that there's not a lot of people around that are really invested in them, that really care about them on a day-to-day. The ones that I've worked with anyway, a lot of them are in the system. But it just makes a difference, apart from getting the rec centers back, which is amazing, or trying to turn the senior centers into rec centers and all these collective efforts. It just sometimes an individual effort to just offer compassion and a listening ear to the kids. And if you see some of the kids acting up or in the streets, just offer them an ear, try to talk to them, ask them, what's going on, or what happened in their day, or with them in general, that caused them to be where they are. And a lot of the time they'll sit and vent and talk to you for a long time about these things because they don't have anyone to listen a lot of the times. And so there's just pent up anger. And I also just wanted to, I guess, put out an idea, or I don't know if anyone wants to give feedback about starting up small places for the kids to have something to do on our own time, pooling together money from your friends and community members and neighbors, buying a house on a block, buying up a block if you can, and just getting people from the community come out, offer courses to these kids, someone who knows how to sew, someone who is a basketball player and can offer them, in the yard, in the backyard, some recreational activities or something like that, but just getting together our own resources, sacrificing our own funds and our own time, and not waiting for anyone else or the city or anyone to come and try to help us out. But it's really gonna take a community effort for it. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely give yourselves a hand. Listen, what is your name? Tashima, what Tashima just said about giving our kids an ear, listening to them, that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do here at the Real News Network. That's why we come out first and third Tuesdays here to Ida B's, have you come sit, buy some delicious food, have people on this panel that you can direct questions to. We try to steer the conversation, but in the end, the conversation is guided by you and what you want, what's interesting to you, and what you need in your communities. So we want to be that listening ear for you. So we thank you so much for coming out. Again, my name is Jacqueline Lukman. This is, Taya Graham. This is, thank you very much, Rocky, for coming out. Rocky Brown, Lucky, thank you so much. And Councilman Ryan, I am so sorry for confusing you two, but look, when you're in D.C.,
I have never been called a politician.
Look, when you come from Southeast D.C., all the players, their faces might change, but they're all kind of the same, so it's nice to come to a small town, because for us D.C. residents, Baltimore is a small town. It's nice to come to a little small town and have decent people on a panel and in a room that you can talk about real issues with. So this is Real Talk, though. Thank you very much. This is the Real News Network.